Hello, I am No Sweat. This is December 11th, 2020, and we're having a 65-degree sunny day here in eastern Kentucky at Richmond, and shooting a video. Wanted to update people about the Sions that I've bred and devoted my life to. This is a loft. There's no birds in right now. We're not going to stay in here very long, but if I can get Jeremy to pan a little bit, just kind of shoot around in here, Jeremy. Just show. This is the main loft where I move a lot of young birds and fly them in here. The young birds love this. We've got this air comes in here. We've got a vent up there. I've got an aviary there. I've got another aviary over there. Got a trap up there, and then we've got these different kinds of roost. As you know, some of the older young birds, as they get older, want to nest and stuff. So I've got a little bit of nesting area for some of the older young birds as they mature. And I start breeding. The birds are already mated, and I've got babies and eggs right now. And I'm hoping the bands will get here around Christmas, and I'll have babies to band at Christmas time. But I just wanted to show you, they love this loft. Look how tall it is. You see, it's much taller than the way lofts are designed. A-frame. It's an old chicken coop that's been converted. Got a tin floor, got a metal floor in it, and the birds absolutely love this loft. They love this height, and I do too. And I highly recommend that this is the kind of loft, if somebody wants to fly young birds at long distances, this is the kind of loft that I would tell people to build. An old chicken coop. And again, we get a lot of air. I got air coming in from three sides. And if you look at pigeons in the wild, that's what they like. If they're roosting under a bridge or something, they want to have a whole big area around them, 200 degrees or more around them, the fresh air coming up around them, so they can go out. The birds stay really healthy in here, and it's cool in here in the summer, and it's relatively warm in here in the winter. I don't have any artificial heat for the birds, and I like the birds to be as natural as possible, and they'll feather out better in the winter when they're exposed to a cold, and they're a little more robust in nature and a little healthier they have to be in order to survive, and that's what I'm looking for with pigeons. Real strong pigeons. Okay, that's enough in here. But right now, I'm No Sweat, and again, it's middle of December 11th, and I'm trying to herd all the birds over here in this one aviary on this one breeding loft. This is a small loft where I keep some real key breeders. A lot of the blue bars here are the parents of birds that we flew in South Africa for the last 2 years. This year they didn't have South Africa, so we've moved the birds over to they now have been entered in the Victoria Falls race, which will take place, I believe, the last week in July this year, 2021. The older birds here are the parents of those birds. I sent 35 birds, 7 teams. John J.W. Jennings in North Carolina is a full partner in all this, and I'm hoping that we'll do well. It's our first year to fly with the Victoria Falls race. You'll see that I keep primarily brick reds and blue bars. But and I have one blue check cock in here right now, which I'd never get rid of. His mother was 128. I flew her 50 miles, 100 miles, and then took her to Florida 500 miles, and she came back early the second day. Sam Miller and I was here when she came back, and then her nestmate came about 15 minutes later, 129. I don't have either one of those two birds. Now there's the blue check cock. He is a son out of 128 and looks a lot like her, and I mated him to that red hen that's above him, and she's out of the red pair, which had all four of her grandparents are 600 milers, pretty famous birds. Even that red check cock there's out of the red pair, the little lighter red check cock, which he's much more typical of what the red pair raised. They raised birds that weren't brick red so much as they were kind of a medium shaded red check. This dark red cock here is out of the red pair. You can't get much better blood than that for long distance flying, and that's why I have it so infused in this group. But I mated that blue check cock onto this red hen, and anybody that knows anything about color with pigeons, which I had to learn from Charles Heitzman as a small boy. He made me learn it. you have a color sex opposite loft. So you have a blue check cock like him, and they're going to come your way, Drew. And then I mated him. Okay, this is my blue check cock. I've got another blue check cock that raised 1,000 milers. If you'll know, this is 128 Sun. I don't know if you can see his eyes very well, but he's got a real pretty violet eye. Don't know much what else. He's built perfect. He's tight vented. Got a strong back. Got a wonderful homing instinct. He flew back from 500 miles as well. And like I was saying, if you made a blue check cock back onto a red hen, any of the babies out of them that are his color will be females, and any of the birds that are the same color as the mother will be males. Or if they're even a black check, he raised a black check and a dark blue check, so they have to be females this time, since he's made it to a red hen. Keep that rolling. Show you a hen here. It's a real special bird. This is 26035. She's the mother of a bird that was summertime in South Africa, which led the entire United States on about 4 or 5 of the average speeds, while they were flying them about 35 times. She's a dark-eyed, she's out of a 33, the hen over there that flew 700 miles. She flew 500 miles. A wonderful, beautiful hen. And I've got her mated back to her old mate. This is the 3rd year in a row I've kept them mated. And he's 64, it's his band number. That's 64 there. Let me try to catch some more. This is one of my favorite pigeons, and that's his name. His name is my favorite. I raised 535 birds 3 years ago, and this was my very favorite bird out of 535 birds. He's a fantastic peon. Got the dark eye, dark red eye, red orange eye. It's a little bit bigger pigeon. I flew 4 birds out of him in South Africa last year that all went through the quarantine, and they all went through all the races. 2 of them finished on the last race. One of them was 300th or 299. He has a real rich feathering, real smart pigeon. He's one of the bigger pigeons that I own. He's a long cast. Just such a handful of bird to put down on. It's such a high quality pigeon. He's on my website several times. When you see him, my favorite, you see him over and over and over again. He's still going through a little bit of a molt right now. He's got a little bit of a head molt going on around his neck, so he's not as beautiful as he gets. I want to show another bird over here on this side that's a real favorite, becoming a favorite. This is 64. He's the father of summertime, and he has an eye that, like a lot of people, I don't know if you can come in close on that eye and show it, but he has a kind of eye that a lot of fanciers want this eye. It's a kind of a violet eye with a lot of light color out around the pupil. He's a very smart bird. He's a compact pigeon, extremely well built, and he's bred all the pigeons out of him. Again, last year he bred a pigeon that flew very well in South Africa. And I've got 5 birds out of 64 and 35, 26035. I call her 35, and I've got another pigeon that's actually banded 35, and I call them 35, both of them at times. But 64 and 35, 26035 have raised a lot of really good. They have really good homing instincts. They're a medium-sized bird, and I've entered 5 of those birds this year in the Victoria Falls race. And I just got a gut feeling they'll do good. But he's a classic Sion, that wedge face, and one of my very favorite pigeons, if not the very best pigeon, breeding cockbird that I have right now in my he's about the last bird that I would part with if I had to get rid of all the birds. This would be my first choice to keep, or the last one to get rid of. He's everything that I want in a pigeon. He's just proven to be a great breeder. That's the main thing about him. Lots of personality. Hold on. Okay, I just caught another bird here. It's a young bird. It's a November hatch. I let some of the birds breed late, and this is an unusual pigeon for me to breed. It's what I raise a lot. I made a lot of reds to reds together, and when I do that for successive generations, 4 or 5 generations, red to reds to red to red to red, all down the line, I will on occasion get a recessive red, and that is the situation with this particular little hen. She's going to be a recessive red, and when I get some of the recessive reds, I'll sometimes get a white tail feather. She's got 2 white tail feathers, and you'll see she's got a little bit of white coming out in her flights. She's going to be a wonderful hen, type-wise, and she's got 600-mile blood all in her. She's tight vented. She's just now coming out of the nest, but I just wanted to show her to you because she's a real young recessive red, and I do get some of these. Some of the recessive reds will have a lot of white all down their back. I gave one like that to Gary Stone recently out of a different mating. I've had recessive reds that have had white dots all over their body, little white feathering all over them. But generally my recessive reds are like this. They'll be a kind of an orangish red color, and they'll have a little white tail. I've had several that had white tails, 1 white tail feather. I've had some that had all white tail feathers. Generally speaking, the recessive reds have a little less quality feather or strength in their feather than do the normal reds, my darker reds. That's the only thing that I can notice about them. But that's a recessive red. That's a typical recessive red. Just wanted to show it. Sions. You do get them. The whole time that Charles Heitzman bred pigeons in his whole life, thousands and thousands of pigeons, I would guess. If he had pigeons for 50 years, 60 years, and was raising, 500 birds a year, so he raised maybe 300,000 birds or something in his lifetime, 250,000 or whatever. He only raised 2 solid white pigeons in his life. He bred them both times out of red checks, but they were always Sions, and he called them albinos, and that's the only. He didn't raise hardly any recessive reds that I ever saw, and I knew his birds. He said, according to him, that I knew his birds better than he did in the last several years of his life. He told me that more than once. But I wanted to show this little recessive red off.
Yeah.
Okay, right now I've got a brick red hen in we call them brick reds, and a lot of people love a brick red because they're sort of a brick color. You can see it. Of course, the light's kind of odd here this morning. It's getting close to noon. It's about 11:30. We're getting kind of an auto. But she's a classic Heitzman Sions. If you went into Heitzman's Loft 60 years ago, you would have seen 150 birds that looked like this pigeon. And I'll show you a little odd thing, and Heitzman enjoyed it. If you'll look at the feather, the colors of this particular bird, you'll know it's a hen real quick, if you don't even know anything about pigeons at all, because you see it's got a tan color. It's a light brown or a darker brown, I'll say. It's a brown, it's not a black. It's not a gray, it's a brown. Once you examine it, you see that little sliver going through there. And when you see that, you know it's automatically a female. The females have brown in their tails. A male will have black. And so when you see a mark like that in there, and you look at it close, you say, oh no, that's an off brown color. So you'll know it's a female. This is a pretty nice, one of my better breeding hens. She bred some gorgeous brick reds young birds this year in 2020. And I've left her with her same mate. Classic Sions, that kind of face. More like what I call the Robert Sions, because Paul Sions was not looking for beauty or that kind of showy type face at all. He didn't care. He was trying to raise birds that just came home and were champions. And Robert started picking out birds that were a little more uniform in type. And when he shipped those birds to the United States, Robert did. And Robert sent a lot of birds in the United States.
they were, generally speaking, they were much more of this kind. And she's got a chestnut eye on her. And Charles Heitzman was crazy about chestnut eyes for breeding. I did an article in the Racing Pigeon Bulletin and had a color photograph in there of a bird with a chestnut eye and talking about that. It was an article on Charles Heitzman. I did over 50 articles on Charles Heitzman in his lifetime. And it was one of the reasons that Charlie and I were such good friends, because I got him free advertising for one thing, and I did most of his photographing for him. So that you can see she's even got red all in her back, the dark red. She's a typical brick red Sion. You can cut it off. I wanted to video this bird for a minute. It's another brick red cock. He's a son out of that red hen that I had just a while ago. Classic Sion. Again, more like a Heitzman Sion. Heitzman's birds were a little bit bigger Sions than I typically breed. They had much more this kind of feather, a little wider flights and secondaries. This is a classic Heitzman Sion, and a beautiful son out of that hen, and he himself has been a great breeder again this year. And this is 2000 and let me see if I can shit this off here. Hang on. He was born 2000 and lights band in here today. 16 KY banded, and which I have the KY bands. I'm the only person in the United States that has the KY bands issued to him. And again, that was in honor of Charles Heitzman. He was the person who had all the KY bands when he was alive, and that was a trademark of his. And so I always, the first 200 bands that I get each year are always AU KY bands. This is 18061. I call him 1861 because of the Civil War, but it's actually 18061. I know who he is. And I've got him mated to his sister, and they've been breeding some really fine pigeons as well. He is a wonderful pigeon to put in your hand. Oh God, he's perfect. You know, the way the keel and the pectoral muscles all flush together, you couldn't ask for much better. I'm ready. Okay, I've got another bird here. I don't know how your light's doing. This is a dark red check. He's not really a brick red. The checks have a check pattern in them, you know, and a red velvet is more like the brick reds. They're less checkered in the pattern, and the velvet is dominant over a check. When you're mating two pigeons together, there's all these different color patterns. There's bar patterns, pencils, checks, and velvets, and without getting into everything else, grizzles and so many other colors. But this pattern is recessive normally to a velvet pattern. This particular bird is out of the red pair. When I say out of the red pair, it's a red check cock and a red hen. Both flew 500 miles as young birds, but their four grandparents were hardcore 600 miles, the best 600-mile young bird I've just about ever raised. Mated back onto a blue check hen named Long Wings, which was a great 600-mile young bird. And then I mated a red velvet cock back onto a little blue pencil hen that I called Chattanooga. And I mated their babies together, those four 600-mile young birds, back onto two birds that flew 500. And almost every bird I raised out of that pair, I called it the red pair, they all flew 500 and 600 miles themselves. Very consistent, and you almost always knew they were going to fly good. Particularly when I raised a hen out of them, an odd-colored hen, a blue check or a black check hen that would come out of them on occasion. It was almost like money in the bank, knowing that they would fly 500 or 600 miles as a young bird. Never would get them on the day usually, but almost always early on the second day. But he's such a classic. This is a typical, what I'd call a robin Sion more than a Heitzman Sion. It's very much my own family of birds. They're smaller, they're more racy. I think they're maybe even a little bit smarter, but they're long distance birds. He doesn't carry near the weight that a lot of the birds have. He's built perfect, but he's just a much lighter pigeon. And he's got a really long wing in ratio to his body. Beautiful dark eye on him. Sort of a chestnut with a little yellow in it. Sort of a dark orange yellow, you can see it. I'm just talking about the color. This without getting into all the eye sign. I'm not a big eye sign person. I've yet to see somebody that can pick out birds that are going to fly before a race, not after, when it comes to eye sign. A lot of people proclaim to be great eye sign people because they all look at this pigeon after it flew, you know, and won a race, and they go through and pick up the bird and say, no wonder it won, look at that great eye sign. But that same person has not got the ability to pick out that bird before the race and tell you it's going to win. I've yet to see that guy. Especially, you know, you hand him 50 pigeons and say, which one of these the best ones is going to win? Which one of these birds is going to win that race? Not going to happen if he doesn't know anything about them, other than just the eye. All right, we're going into a third loft now. This is a breeding loft and a flying loft. Right now, December 11th, 2020, we're using it primarily just to breed from. Later on in the year, we'll divide off the loft and use this one room on this side to fly young birds out of. So I fly young birds out of a loft over there, and I fly young birds out of a loft here. And sometimes, even down there where I keep some of the whites, I fly young birds down there, depending on if I have a lot of young birds to fly. I divide them up into those 3 lofts. Okay, we're going in. Again, I'm no sweat. I've had pigeons for 62 years. I'm 70 years old this year. This loft has 10 floors. We have skylights in the loft. We have ventilation up in the upper ends. I have an aviary there, a really large aviary there, a walkout aviary in there. And I tell everybody, I say, listen, when you're building lofts, make sure you've got aviaries on both side walls and aviaries on the front. So you want as much air coming through as you possibly can, especially up in the eaves as well. It gets hot in a loft, and you want as much light coming into your lofts as possible. So you want don't have to be entirely, don't want it all skylight, but you do at least a third of the roof. I would recommend to be skylights, and I would recommend half of the loft aviaries. For good, healthy pigeons, that's what you want. Again, I've got some babies that are coming up right now. Here we can come over here. It's 27949, a blue hen that I bred last year. She's out of gold, a blue hen, and a cock over there, my favorite, which is a big strong pigeon but has good conformation. And you'll tell a lot of times, I still on occasion when I'm banding birds, I'll use these old bands that we had like in the 50s and 60s. I'll put a band like that on the birds a lot of time. Lets me know real quick that bird's pretty special. Little baby I just picked out of the nest, a November hatch. I've got some birds. And again, this is real typical of the hardcore blood. I talk about this in other videos, but if you see this color red, and you see those gray feathers in there, without me even knowing anything about my pigeons at all, I thought, oh, that's hardcore blood, because that's a genetic trait, a genetic color trait that I get in a lot of my reds and silvers when they have these gray feathers, these flights in a slate, kind of a light slate color. So this is gonna be a classic little hardcore red coming up. Just showing you the color, just a color characteristic of the hardcore blood. We're walking through the loft. We're coming over into another room, a good sized room. I like large rooms and lofts. I hate walking into a loft and they're little and people are squeezing through doors and all that kind of stuff. I think it's kind of ridiculous for pigeons myself, and I've never liked it. I've seen a few people that have been successful with it. I know a guy up in Covington that has a loft like that, and he's a very good flyer and very smart pigeon man, but I don't like that, and I've been in a lot of lofts. I like a loft where they can do whatever they want in it. Because I'm going to walk us out into the aviary out there. Oh, there's an eggshell that's hatched. I talked about that in one of my emails this summer, how the pigeons will take the eggshells when they hatch and carry them out. They'll actually pick them up themselves and with their beak and carry them out and put them out in the aviary. And there's different reasons why. Some people believe it's not to attract predators by leaving, or mice or something like that that's inside. And I happen to believe that it helps get the two babies going off equally so that one of them doesn't get somehow tangled up in that eggshell. I think it's a safety precaution that the pigeons themselves, birds are far and away much more intelligent than people realize. Up here along this top, Jeremy, you can see some real classic pigeons that I've bred. If you see a blue band like that little red hen up there, that means I bred her last year. that brick red hen there with the really almost black eyes. She was bred last year. You can see the blue band on her right leg. I banded all the birds that I band are always banded with the blue band and on the right leg, so you'll know that I banded them. And that red cock that flew out right there, that's another one. So let me walk some of these birds out into the aviaries. And hold on, shut it off first. This is Hardcore Junior. I raised 35 pigeons out of Hardcore and Long Wing. And Pigeon looked more like his daddy, Hardcore, than any of them. He's just exactly like Hardcore. Maybe slightly smaller, but same face, same eye, and same body, and same fantastic wing for a silver. So it's a super strong, I don't know what you call it, a strength factor in those feathers. It's hard. It's a harder feather than you see in most of the red gene pigeons. He's really got it, and he's got that light. Some people call it a gravel eye. It's really a violet eye, but I don't know if you can see that. Can you get that in that eye? That's the Hardcore eye. Hardcore even has a little lighter eye. And I raised a bird out of this pigeon last year that was, I loved him. I named him Seagull because he has the physical features of a pelagic bird, that long narrow flights and everything else. And I named him Seagull. Well, Seagull raised a bird this year that is better than he is physically, and I named him Ghost. And each one of those successive generations, Hardcore was light colored eyes, Hardcore Junior has the light eyes, Seagull has the light eyes, and now the fourth generation down from that I call Ghost. Ghost is really super white eyed and with really small pupils. And I'm anxious to try to breed some babies out of those birds to fly. I'm really wanting to aim those birds at the Indiana Hoosier Classic this year, the 2021 Classic up in Indiana. I'm hoping to get some birds in that race and with this particular blood. He raised a bird that finished 15th in the 150 at the Hoosier Classic the year that they had the fire. And they had what they call a smash race. And he had a mealy, strawberry mealy son in that race that I really thought the bird had a chance of, doing well, even winning that race once they got them out to 350, 400 miles. My birds do better once they get out longer. The people who have my birds know that. And I really believe that that's where you find your quality pigeons are in races 350 and past 350. Once you get into 400, 500, and 600 miles, then you're going to start getting into really good pigeons. And if you're looking for pigeons to breed from, to start a loft from, you really want to look at pigeons that have done well at 500 and 600 miles, 700 miles, 1,000 miles if you can find them. 1,000 milers today are very, very rare. And even 700 milers today are very, very rare. So that's because those birds have shown that they've got a lot of heart and they've got good homing instincts. And today with all the hawks and the pollution and the communication towers and the magnetic fields being screwed up and everything else, it's harder to find good long distance birds that have flown those long distances many, many, many times. The odds of them being able to make it are way against them much more than they used to be. So anyways, that's Hardcore Junior. He's got 2 babies right now, and I don't think I'm going to be able to stretch them out long. I think I'll have to band them with 2020 bands. I'm hoping I can get a 2021 band on them because they would be wonderful pigeons. Really super early hatches to have in that race. And I've got him mated to a little pencil hen named Chattanooga Junior. She's a clone of her mother, Chattanooga. And they're line breeding. He's out of Hardcore, and she's out of Hardcore. He's out of Hardcore and Long Wings, and she's out of Hardcore and Chattanooga. So both of them have the same father, and when you mate 2 birds that have the same father back together, it's called line breeding. I'm lining the genes back to one pigeon. And I'm trying to actually, if you do it right, you can actually breed those birds out of that. You might not only be getting that blood from that particular pigeon, but if you do it correctly and you're smart about it, you might be able to improve on that pigeon. It has a lot to do with how you go about mating those birds together, trying to get a bird that are improved. With he and that pencil hen, I've gotten every kind of color under the rainbow. I've gotten pencils and mealies and strawberry mealies and silvers and blue bars, blue checks. I've gotten recessive reds. I've gotten all kinds of colors, but having mated that mealy back onto the pencil. These 2 birds right here, it's just two typical no sweat Sions. a blue bar and a brick red. That's a blue bar cock and a brick red hen. That's this year's hen. But in type and in color, this is very much what I have. She'll increase in size. My Sions, they evolve slowly. They come up a dimension each year, as many pigeons will. But you can see that bird right there is already going on his second year. He's a yearling. And so you can see he's a pretty good sized pigeon already. And when he gets to be a 2-year-old, he'll jump up again a little bit in size. And again at 3 years old. My birds continue to grow for about 3 or 4 years. And you won't recognize those birds being babies as to how they appear when they get 4 and 5 years old. I tell people that to be patient, at looking at Sions, because they will. My particular family of Sions will grow slowly. All right, I'm Robbie Robbins, or No Sweat. I'm called No Sweat because I've written 6 books so far. I've got 4 unfinished books that I'm working on. One of them this year is going to be about fish in the southern Florida area. I've done an artistic approach with underwater photography about fish, and I'm hoping that somebody will appreciate what I've done with that. And then I've got some other works that are unfinished. A couple of them were related back to the ocean. I had a book that was supposed to come out in China this past year, but just in a word, it all got stolen from me by the Chinese. So I won't go into it any further than that. But it was a 500-page book that was on Charles Heitzman and on Sions. Probably the best book that's ever been done on them, with a lot of original photographs and stuff. But that's come and gone. So I want to talk right now. What you're seeing here, Jeremy, can you zoom in on some of these birds as best you can? We're in these birds right here are all basic breeders for 2021, even though this is December, and they're 3/4 of them are already mated. You'll see it's all blue bars and brick reds. There's nothing in here but that. I don't have any birds with white flights or any splashes. They're all brick reds or blue bars. And these birds are fairly related to each other, because the reds and these blues do come down, go back onto a blue bar cock that was imported in the United States by Paul Sion named Leroy, the King, which was bred by Paul Sion and imported by Lou Curtis at the Landing View Lofts in New York. And Charles Heitzman, my friend, was able to get 2 babies out of that pigeon, and one of them was 1104 and 1033, the red check mating that was his original pair of his Sions that founded his Sion colony. And so I have that blood different ways, and I'm probably the only guy maybe alive today, the only guy in the United States, North America, and the rest of the world that has the Leroy blood, particularly as strong as I have it, because I have it over and over and over again, all line bred through these birds. And you'll start to see a general configuration with these birds that are similar to each other. It's not so much the Leroy, it's been my own design from selective breeding from one year to the next. I'm looking for a certain kind of body, a certain kind of head, certain kind of feather, certain kind of stance. And after doing that, 20 or 30 straight years, you start to get a bird that's kind of reflective of yourself. And that's where it comes to people start talking about families. Charles Heitzman had said to me, if you can go back 4 generations and you bred every single pigeon in all 4 generations, then you can kind of call it your family. That's what Heitzman told me, and that's probably pretty true. You very rarely today, with so much hybrid breeding going on, birds being bred to this one champion to the other, or whatever mix that people want to do. Oh, we'll mix this bird in to improve it, like they're putting stuff in a kettle or a soup let's put a little more pepper in it and spice it up, and let's put a little more meat in it to do this and that. I don't do that. I work within a family. All these genes are all together, and all I try to do is improve upon what I have from year to year. Don't introduce any new birds. We'll come. You stay where you're at. I'll come down here, talk about them a little bit. I'll kick it. Hang still. They'll come at you. Get back over. This is a young blue hen, a young red hen that I bred this year. And I've got pictures of it on the internet, and a lot of people love these brick reds. And I showed you over in the other loft where his grandmother and the mother and the father it came from this bird. This is out of that same line. and they call them the black eyes, but they're not black eyes. They're a dark chestnut violet eye. This bird has a fantastic dark chestnut eye, is what it actually is. It's not at all black. I don't know if the light will show that or not, but I can see it from right here without putting a loop on it or doing anything where it's super close up. That's just super dark brown eye, which is, Heitzman would go crazy about that. Beautiful brick red, real rich feathering, and has that wonderful head, almost like people like to show birds. That's the first thing you look at when you look at a pigeon's its face, and you'll see these little rifts, ruffles in the feathers. That's another thing that Heitzman like to breed for. Again, you'll see the blue band on the right hand leg shows you that I bred the bird this year. Let's see what her band number is. ARPU. It's a blue band. The first 200 bands that I use are KY bands, and then usually the second 200 bands will be ARPU. And that lets me know, without even looking at her pedigree, you're going back into the record book, and the record book that I had in 2020 is so thick you wouldn't believe, with all the notations and stuff that I made in it. But even without knowing anything about this bird, once I see ARPU, that tells me that this bird was one of 200, past the first 200 birds that I bred this year, without looking at where the molt's at. Put her down. Trying to pick up different birds. Let me pick up one. All right, again, we're talking about, you'll see a couple of late November hatches, and even October hatches. They're out of key pairs, some of these little blues. That bird over there, I call him Elvis Presley. That's Elvis, because I always thought he's so gorgeous. He's got that just beautiful quality about him. And I've got a bird right here that's little Chattanooga that I talked about earlier. Her mother was a fantastic pigeon. Her mother flew from Chattanooga after being picked up by a hawk in midair, and it should have killed her, and I thought it did. I watched the hawk carry the bird off. The bird came back the next day from 200 miles with one tail feather and bleeding all out the chest. But did come back and didn't fly the rest of the year, but the next year took it 600 miles and let it loose in Florida. And it came back completely covered in oil. I didn't even recognize the bird. And I named the bird Chattanooga because that hawk attack happened in Chattanooga. And after she came back covered in oil, we never did fly her no more. She had proven what a great pigeon she was. You'll see here, just looking at these blue bars, how they cover in the back, the kind of balance they basically have, just looking at them. And you'll see that their faces are very similar. Their eyes, the eye wattles, the eye sears. It's all coming from a distinct family. Even though there's a lot of variations within the family. That really pretty blue cock over there, he's one of the very rare pigeons that I raised that size and that type that came out of hardcore and long wings. He's a bigger pigeon than they normally raised, and just a fantastic pigeon. I'll pick him up for a minute. Hang on. This is probably the very best physical specimen that I ever raised out of hardcore. He's bigger than hardcore. Look what an eye on this pigeon. This is an eye that most people would kill you to have, particularly flying today in these one loft races, like in South Africa, like in Victoria Falls, and so many other races. I see this kind of eye prevalent so many times on the birds that were the champion pigeons. He's such a perfect pigeon. He is super tight in the vent, and you can see the pink flesh that he's got. Such a wing on this pigeon. He's just dynamite. I don't know I can't brag on this pigeon enough. His band number, he's a 2016 Foys. That's again another band. I get bands from Foys sometimes when I'm getting low on bands. And he's 14450, 450 I call him. And I just wanted to show him off as a classic really robins or no sweat Sions.
All right.
Okay. I want to talk for a minute about all these sticks out here. Because I don't know if I've ever been in a pigeon loft or out in an aviary of anybody that's got so much junk piled up like this. But you know, I really don't care if I've ever been in another loft where they have this is what the birds like. And on pretty days, these birds all come out here and get mixed up in on these different types of places. This hen here, I just picked it up. Jeremy said she got stuck over there on that root, or I think she did get a bit stuck. But again, I don't even know who this bird is right this second. But this bird, without me not knowing, I already know by looking at these flights and knowing by this color. This is that hardcore, this is my hardcore stuff. You know, you learn your birds after 50, 60 years. And I know them a lot of times, even if I don't know the individual bird, I still know basically who they are just by picking them up and knowing their colors and their heads and everything else. And I know if I got out the record books and stuff and started looking at this bird, that it'd be a hardcore bird. This is a AA band. So I think last year I used as many as 4 or 5 different kinds of bands. I had AA, ARPU, the KY bands. Not sure if I had any FOI bands last year or not. But I went through a lot of bands. Look how beautiful this young bird is right here, just in balance. I have covers in the back. That's exactly what you want with a good racing pigeon. That kind of balance and that kind of look. That's a classic right now. Robin's never did catch Elvis for you. I want to catch Elvis. Where you at, Elvis? And I've got another bird here. It's Elvis's son, which it's almost like. Come here. Just keep it running on me. They'll probably come out. And I made it Elvis last year, back onto a hen banded 74, which is down out of 33, which is the 700-mile hen, which has been really breeding all the really good pigeons in the last couple of years. And she's either the mother or grandmother of held 30 of the 35 birds that we sent to the Victoria Falls race. So her blood is super strong in there. Of course, she's a 700-mile young bird. And I doubt that there's a whole lot of 700-mile young birds roaming around in the country right now. And I mated her back onto a 500-mile young bird, cockbird, which his band number is 96. And 96 was one of 8 young birds bred by the same pair, all in 1 year, and all 8 of those young birds flew 500 miles that year and went through 2 smashes. I don't know if anybody in the United States has ever bred 8 baby pigeons out of 1 pair of pigeons the same year, and all 8 of those babies, I emphasize baby pigeons, young birds, all 8 of them flew 500 miles as a young bird that year. And I kept the very best one out of them, 96. He's down in the other loft, and I mated him back onto the 700-mile hen, that flew 700 miles as a young bird, number 33, the black-eyed hen. And they're really raising some good pigeons. This is Elvis, absolutely a gorgeous Sions, beautiful red-orange eye, all class. He raises gorgeous birds. I'm not getting any really good 500 and 600 mile young birds out of him, but I get a lot of birds that fly 300 and maybe 400 miles out of him. I've got him mated a little bit back into the longer distance birds this year with a dark-eyed hen that's a little more narrow in body. So I expect that they'll physically and also instinctually be able to fly that 500 miles as young birds this year. He's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful pigeon. Little thick in the neck, his hackle. He's getting up there. I think Elvis is probably 5 years old now, and for me, I hardly ever have birds much older than that. Don't know who else to talk to you about in here. Just kind of wanted you to see all these birds here, all these reds, every single red here. These are all 2020 birds. None of these birds are old birds. They're all this year's birds, which are coming up on being yearly. But all these are 2020. next bird I'd like to show you, because he is so typical Charles Heitzman Sions. Really, a lot of them had the lighter color heads like he's got. In France, I think they have a word that means they dip their head in powder, rouge or whatever it is, and so he has that. You'll see that on some of my reds where they have a lighter color head. It's usually the red checks, not so much the brick reds. One thing I wanted to talk to you about him, he's classic Heitzman Sions. He's much more looks like a Heitzman Sions than he looks like a no sweat Sions. There are slight differences. He's got a little different look in the face. He's a little bit bigger. But I wanted to remember, if you remember earlier in the video, I talked about pigeons having brown in their tail. Makes them a hen. Well, this pigeon has black. The difference in that pigeon and this one is that's black, if you can see it in the proper light. And when they have black ticking in their tails like that, a lot of times have it also in their flights. You'll see it right here is black. You'll see it over here is a little bit of black coming out. And a lot of times with each successive year as they go through their molt, that black will increase on these birds. But anytime you see black, it has to be definitely a black, configure little markings of black on the bird, it's always a male. That's a sex-linked color trait with racing pigeons. So I know automatically, if I didn't know anything else about this bird, I would know that it's a male simply because it has black in its wings. And I would know that when it was a little baby just coming out of the nest. I could look at it and see that's a cockbird because he has that black and he's a red. But he's one of my more favorite cockbirds I raised this year. A fantastic bird, not even bit. He's not even a year old. A young bird. The birds really like it here. I've got a big creek that runs down through there that I get water at from the creek in the winter time, because all our water lines are all frozen up, and not water lines, but the way we get water, I bust ice on the creek and carry it up here in 5-gallon buckets. And sometimes the water is a little polluted and dirty, but they get it anyways. I think it helps build the resistance toward bacteria and stuff. And I have extremely healthy pigeons. When they go through the quarantines, I had a higher percentage of birds that get through the quarantines than anybody else in the United States. My ratio is usually around 90% of my birds survive both the United States and the African quarantines. And I don't know of anybody else in the United States that has a higher ratio of birds that survive just the quarantines. And it speaks well about the health of my birds. I do not ever give these birds any vaccinations. I never give them anything for any medicine. I don't keep any older birds that don't lay or sterile or anything like that. I don't run an old folks home. And if a bird's the slightest bit sick or down, I'll usually kill it. I don't run a hospital, and I don't run an old folks home. All the birds that I keep have to be healthy, lively, energetic, vivacious, wonderful pigeons, or they're just simply not here. Anyways, we'll move from here. Jeremy's trying to shoot some of the birds here in this one aviary right now. Again, just to show the family of the Sions that I have. I think they're gorgeous. All the blue banded birds that you see are this year's pigeons. Except for there's a couple old birds back there with blue bands from about 4 or 5 years ago. But again, you see the family, and you see they all close in the back. They're all tight vented, and they all have a wonderful balance, and they all have a wonderful feather. Okay, the pigeon that I've got, anytime you see a bird like this hen, this blue hen in the back here, you know, last year, and I did it a lot this year, I've gotten to where I do it more. And there's another bird another hen over there, 2 bands. That band will say no sweat on it sometimes. But anytime I band a bird with 2 bands, it means it's really a significant blooded pigeon. It's a bird I want to breed back out of for sure, because you know its parents and its grandparents all usually at least 2 straight generations were all 600 milers. So if you see a double banded pigeon, for me it has to be a very important pigeon. And you'll see that I see 3 of them out there right now. That hen, and that cockbird are all double banded. And that tells me, without even looking at them or knowing these birds, you know, that's a fantastic pigeon. And there's another one up there. There's 4 up there that I see are double banded real quick. Okay, the bird I've got right now, I want to talk about her. This is Little Chattanooga. And she's got a heck of a history to her. She flew 500 miles. Real small pigeon. But really, when I fly the birds 500 and 600 miles, it's these little small pigeons that do the best for me, and particularly this blood. It's very, very reliable. And I had those birds come back from 500, 128 and 129 that one year that Sam was with me, and he caught the bird. He came in this loft and actually picked her up, and he said, "No sweat." He said, "That bird's not as big as a sparrow." I said, "Yeah, that's what flies good for me on these long distance. As a rule, you know, I get some other birds back, but if I'm going to bet on a pigeon to be one of them come back, it's going to be a little bird like this." And this hen is one of the smallest, if not the smallest hen that I've got in this loft. Very smart pigeons, these Chattanooga pigeons. I call them the Chattanooga. She is a clone of her mother, Chattanooga. Chattanooga is a pencil, and a pencil, in case people don't know what a pencil is, it's a blue bar that has this pattern spread across the shoulders of the wings, or the coverts, of these little black dots. And it can be just a few, or it can be a whole lot like she's got. And without even knowing anything about pigeons at all, you can look at this pigeon. See, she's out of hardcore in Chattanooga. And hardcore was a silver bar, and it shows in her colors. You'll see in the black, you'll see that little brown tint. Right here especially, you'll see a little bit of brown in there. You'll see it a little bit real, if you've got good eyes, you'll see it's not a solid gray. That's where that color genetically has bled over into the black gene and the red gene have mixed together. So even if you didn't know anything about this pigeon, and you were a smart pigeon guy, and you pull this wing out, you would know that she probably has a red gene bird in her background, because you can see the red coloring coming back out in her, even though she's black gene or a blue, a blue pencil is what she is. A lot of people think that the pencil colors are fantastic colors. They look a little bit like a checker, but it's not a checker pattern. A checker is more of a distinct bunch of dots, I'll call them, black dots on the wing. This is more of a smudge or real lightly colored. She's the only pencil of this color that I have in the loft right now. See, I don't know if she'll hold up here or not. Probably not. She's super smart bird. She's not going to hang. And she's even got a couple of little tiny white feathers behind her head, like Chattanooga had. Chattanooga had more white on her head than that. You know, today is like 65 degrees, so this is really an unusual winter day in Kentucky. And I've walked the birds out of the aviaries. Jeremy, if you can, shoot up in there. If you can, zoom in on the birds at different times, just to show this family of Sions. But you know, there's several people in the United States and in the world as well that have Sions. And they're very proud of their birds, and a lot of them are very beautiful. But these happen to be Sions that are not only beautiful, but they're also performing extremely well against the very finest competition in the world. I'm flying against Gerald Koopman of the Netherlands. I'm flying against Klaus in Germany. I'm flying against Mike Gaines in Indiana, and so many other people. And I don't know of anybody else that's got a true old, solid, close-knit family of Sions that's even beginning to do that, or taking their Sions out 500 miles as young birds each year and letting them go and getting them back. I don't know of anybody that's got Sions and is doing that either. So I have combined a certain, what I think is beautiful in pigeons, along with performance. And that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing a fabulous, fantastic group of Sions, and I really believe that I've taken the Sion family, the nucleus of that family, and have improved on it. I don't think Robert Sion ever had this close knit a family. Charles Heitzman certainly didn't have this close knit a family. And I've not really been in anybody's Sion loft that has a family of birds like this, that has the quality that these pigeons have. Anyways, I've talked enough about these birds. Let's move on. Okay, I'm in another loft now. I'm in a fourth loft. It's a fairly small loft, but this is the loft that I bring the birds that we're aiming to put in, special one loft races. I bring them over here, and they learn to come up inside this loft. They're never allowed to fly out here. I don't have any access for them to fly out. Again, it's just a very simple loft. I've got roost, and I've even taken some old milk crates and put them together here. Got a wire floor, but this loft gets a lot of air in it. The birds stay really healthy. The whole front of the loft is open. The entire floor is open. And I got one little vent up there. these little odd nest boxes that I got, it came from the heat plant where I work at. This is what we brought coal into the plant with, and they were throwing them away, and my pigeons really liked to use them to get down in and nest and raise babies in. And I've still got several of them, and they've really worked out well with the pigeons. So that's about all there is in this loft. But I want to again emphasize that you really want, I'm getting so much air, 50% of this loft is open. And again, I think a loft should be 50 to 75% open to get really super healthy pigeons. And we'll move on to the loft where I've got a bunch more birds now too. We get water. I get water for the pigeons in the summertime from this. I still got a little water left in it. And we put this camouflage around it, not to camouflage the thing, but to keep mold and, not mold, but algae from growing on the inside. It's got plastic on the inside. And I'm trying to think, I think it holds about, what, 350, 500 gallons, something in that range. And I go through it pretty quick. We run a water hose down to it and fill it up about every 2 weeks or so, if it can even go that long, because I go through a lot of water in the summertime. But that's what this is. This past year, when you'd raise this up, we had a great big, about 5-foot black snake that was staying up here. Stayed up here for about 6 weeks this summer. As a time, in the wintertime like this, I get water here at the creek more times than not. You can see this creek's got a little bit of pollution in it today. You'll see a little bit of suds, which is nothing but pollution. But I bring the buckets down here and I fill them up like that. And I got a bucket of water. And you can see about how clear it is. And that's what my pigeons drink. And usually from November, December, January, and February, and maybe even March, close to 5 months out of the year, my pigeons drink out of this creek right here. A lot of times it's dirty. Sometimes when it floods, it's muddy. In the wintertime, I have to bust the ice and get it out of there. I fall and bust my rear end on these rocks all the time. Sometimes the creek gets up flooding real bad and wash my dam out, and I'll have to rebuild another dam. So that's the way we do it in eastern Kentucky. Okay, we're coming into this whole complex here, this loft. This is the 5th loft. This whole loft here was a big giant barn. And John and I, John's the carpenter, and this is all this entire whole complex is on John's property. And John's been a fantastic person to be a partner with. He's been so good to me, and he loves animals. He loves dogs and rabbits and any kind of wildlife. He really does. Got a tender heart, and he especially loves pigeons. But John raised the floor up in this barn and built it. It's fantastic. He took an old barn and put a tin floor in it, and divided the rooms up and put aviaries on it. And it's been one of the finest lofts that I've ever walked into for raising pigeons. And I've walked into, many people that are millionaires that have got, beautiful lofts and everything just right. It doesn't have to be that way. The quality of the birds and the guy taking care of them has much more to do than beautiful lofts. Right now, when we're walking in here, you'll see this 50-gallon drum's got feed in it. This 50-gallon drum's got feed in it. This big box here has got feed in it. These 3 containers here will hold, let's see, about 30 bags of feed. I'm gonna put 1,500 pounds of feed. I'll show you something here right now today. We've been successful. I was out here yesterday, and voila, I've got a mouse. Any mouse that thinks he's gonna get in here and get free food has got another thing coming to him. And so I've killed one mouse today. And if you're gonna raise pigeons, you're probably gonna have mice come around. So much for that mouse. And I killed him. And I keep poison out in this feed room all the time. Poison and traps, constantly. I'll get mice, I'll get chipmunks, I'll get snakes. I've had skunks, I've had weasels, I've had ferrets, not ferrets, but I've had minks, coyotes, cats, hawks, owls, everything at one time or another tried to get in here, or did get in here in different ways, and their objective is always to try to get the pigeons, usually. Of course, the mice want to get in here where this feed's at. I got my trap set. And I put it right here. And we'll get another one. I put it right here by the, maybe get another one. I haven't been catching many mice this year. These cages right here, these 4, usually I had 6 in here. We took 2 of them out. I'm not doing a lot of pairing this year. Don't want to get into all that, but I've got four pairing cages or mating cages that I've got together. This is the only unbanded hen that I've got out of over 120 pigeons right now. And she flew 500 miles 3 times, 600 miles twice. And she's a small hen, fantastic pigeon. I mated her last year to a son out of 64 and 26035, the parents of Summertime. I mated her to a son out of them, and I've sent 5 of their babies to the Victoria Falls race. So I thought a lot about her. This year I switched her mating up, and I've got 2 babies over there. They won't make the 2021 banding, but they will be good to this year, and hopefully I'll get another hitch. I want to show you her and him. Again, she's a small hen. We'll walk right over here. He's not going to come out. But I didn't get her banded, but I kept on training her, and I loved her so much. And you look at that, really a strange eye on this pigeon. It's sort of a gray violet eye, which I don't have many eyes like that. And I love this eye. It's a wonderful eye to cross with. She's not particularly tight vented. She's not particularly closed back. She does have a super rich feather. It does have a wonderful eye and has a nice wing on her. And she has enough qualities, the very fact that she has a really strong homing instinct in her that you can't see, that I've kept her, even though she's not banded. And she does raise wonderful babies, which is a lot to do. And I put her with this cock that flew 600 miles as a young bird for the first time. He's a little longer cast, a little bigger. Good God. I put him with her because all the things that she didn't have, he does have. He's bigger. He's got even longer wings and ratio. He's got a completely different kind of eye. And he is just such a strong, super tight vented pigeon. But I thought, I'll put that 600-mile bird with her. I should raise some fantastic pigeons out of him. But look what a wing on a pigeon. Oh my God. And he's one of my house cats. And I'm probably going to enter babies the next round out of their baby, the next set of eggs they raise up and stuff. Those babies will probably go to a one loft race somewhere. So I think it'll be a big important race. Maybe the Indiana Hoosier race, maybe some other race, but it'll. Seen fussing go on. That's one of the hardest pairs to ever photograph on the face of the earth. He will not let me get a good picture of him. He's got a lot of character. He loves that hen. She didn't like him at first, but he fell in love with her. This pair here is line bred back onto the old hen, the 700-mile young bird, the hen. This is my favorite's nest mate, the bird that I talked about earlier today up in the other loft. This is the hen that was raised with him in his nest, hatched out with him. And she looks a lot like him. She's gorgeous. Classic type. That's the no sweat Sion type right there, that face. And she's got all the things that her brother had. And you'll see when I banded her, they were double banded, and I put one of the old bands, one of the old aluminum bands that everybody used to band with back in the 50s, 60s, and even 70s and stuff. They're actually, I think they might be slightly smaller in diameter than the newer type bands. And I love this hen. I love this cock she's with. She's a little bit smaller. When you're mating pigeons, you're always doing a balance act. Physically, bloodline wise, and everything else. And he's a smaller cock, really, than she is. And he has a different kind of feather than she does. And he has a different kind of eye than she does. I really think, knowing how her brother is a big pigeon and how she's a pretty big size hen, I put her with a smaller cock. I wanted to bring that size down. I wanted to make the birds more balanced, and I wanted to get a blend of that kind of red, orange eye, yellow eye that she has back into this actually a type of violet eye. And you know, he's got the real small pupil. And you know, a lot of guys in the game want to say that a bird with a small pupil is what you look for long distance pigeons, and he has that, and he's a perfect mate for her. He's a single tail pigeon. A lot of guys believe if you've got a single tail like that, again, that's also supposed to be a good trademark, and so he's got that to go with her. But he's really a perfect mate for that hen, for the reasons that I said. Okay, in this breeding room, you'll see a lot of older cages, some aluminum, some of those wicker baskets belong to Charles Heitzman. I've got some more at the house. And these carrying baskets here, I got mostly from Gary Stone up in Cincinnati, a lifelong friend of mine. We've had pigeons together for 60 years. We grew up kids in Irvin, and we had pigeons when we was little tiny boys. We'd train them on our bicycles and stuff. And Gary's been one of the most best successful flyers ever in the Cincinnati area, and everybody knows him, how generous he's always been, and what a fantastic pigeon person he is. And I'm very proud to have him as a lifelong friend. Don't know much else. You can see these traps that I use. I set these out in the winter around the loft. Hard to get these steel traps anymore because so many people don't want to hurt anything. And some more of these plastic things that came from the heat plant to use this nest later on if I want to. That's pretty much it. Some live traps. I'll set them out at times. There's some grit, and grits have been really hard for me to get this year. I got that grit from Gary Stone. And then I set out mouse poison, which I've been getting in these little packages. It comes in a real small green pellet. It seems like the mice like that smaller pellet more if you're going to try to poison the creatures. And that's about it. I'll put on my old jacket that I had back up when I used to show pigeons up in New York and in the SRPA. I showed birds for many years and was very successful. I was the only person in the United States that ever entered the Southern Racing Pigeon Association show when it actually had more entries than any other show in the United States. It was the SRPA Dixie show. I entered it 7 times and I won it 7 times. There's never been anybody that ever did that. And I beat just about everybody that you could ever name that was in the pigeon game. They had entered against me in that show at one time or another during those 7 years. Okay, let's go on up here. Sweat again. Now we're in loft number 5. And this is right now, I've put a lot of silver bars in the show game. Certain people that raise rollers and different other pigeons, they call them red bars, but I've always called them just silvers. They're the same thing as blue bars, except they're the red gene. They've got 2 stripes that come across their wings. And you'll have some silvers that are lighter colored than the other silvers, and we'll call them powder silvers. You know, they're light, like they've got powder on them. Silvers has always been one of the main colors with the Sions family. These silvers are a little bit different bred than the Leroys. These come down from the Recessive family and the Grizz family that Sion had, and he considered it himself to be the very best flyers that he had with the silvers that he had. And sure enough, these silvers are extremely good flyers. I get a lot of these birds back from 500 and 600 miles. And this group of silvers that I have here are smaller than the Leroy birds. If you look at them, they're physically smaller. They're not nearly the size as the reds and the blue bars. My blue bars tend to be a little bit bigger than the other birds. The reds are close to them, and these are smaller. Especially a lot of the hens are smaller. The few blue bars that are in here, there's one pair that's 96. That's the bird that I told you flew back, one of 8 birds out of his family that flew back from 500 miles as a young bird. And that's the 700-mile young bird hen beside her. And that's my #1 pair of birds this year. I already sent 5 of those babies out of them this year to the Victoria Falls. And that pair is that hen over there, the dark-eyed hen, she's the grandmother of about, like I said, of about 30 of those 35 birds. So that blood is super strong. It's a long-distance blood that I sent into Victoria Falls. Jeremy, just walking over here. You'll see what these are. Just kind of, if you can, zoom in on the silver family here. Again, these are La Rosalets and the Grizz family. The guys who are really into Sions know what I'm talking about. The very finest bird that Paul Sion ever bred himself was a strawberry mewing hen, a bird similar in color to these birds, and a bird very much this type of pigeon. You'll see that one cock against the wall over there with the double blue bands. He goes really pure back onto it. If you see a double blue banded bird in here, I think there's 3 of them. They really go back onto that old La Rosalet family, so really strong. That's Fatty in the back. I've got several babies out of her. Extremely well hen. Beautiful, beautiful silver hen in the back. These particular little blue bars are out of the great pair that I raised. And this is out of, I'll bring him up. You just keep your camera up there. This bird, this blue-white flight, was the only bird that they raised in this last round. This is out of 96 and the black-eyed hen, out of the 500-mile youngbird cock and the 700-mile youngbird hen. And this is a full brother or sister. Now they're starting to think it might be a hen. That's out of all those birds that I sent to Victoria Falls this year. Extremely well-bred pigeon, and I get about 1 out of every 6 of those birds that will be white flights. I don't keep the white flights as a rule, but this is another one. You can see it's double blue banded. It's got my name and address, man. It came out of this nest up here and fell out of the nest down here on the floor. But you know, it's at that age where they come out of the nest. And if it stays up there, it'll probably come right back out of that nest within the day. Let me catch one of these birds. I want to catch this particular silver cock right here if you'll let me. I'm always playing. This is one of my more important silver cocks that I got. He's a real small cock, but he's got some age to him now. I think he's about 7 years old. And he's got, you know, for a 7-year-old, he's full size. But you can see by my hands, I don't have really big hands. He's a fairly small pigeon. I mean, for a bird at 7 years old. You know, a lot of people say, oh, he's a medium-sized bird. He's not a medium-sized bird. He's a medium-small-sized bird. And I don't know if you can get his eyes, Jeremy, in here. But he's got another classic. His father was 300, a bird I called 300. But he's got a beautiful, again, light gravel eye. Or really, it's a violet eye. That eye's been so successful for me on flying long distance. When I was with Charles Heitzman all those years, he wouldn't have a pigeon that had an eye like that. But my birds that have had the lighter eyes that have been flying good for me, I can't deny any of them. You can see what kind. He has a really wonderful feather quality. Classic Sion, classic old line Sion. A lot of people will probably go dead on heels on that particular pigeon. Let me catch a couple more. I want to talk about this hen because if I had a foundation hen right now going on, which I don't really have a single foundation hen, but if I did have a foundation hen, this is her. This is the bird, and she's not real strong in the vents. She has a fantastic back on her. She covers more in the back than any pigeon I own out of 120 birds. When she covers in the back, it's incredible. And I've noticed that a lot of the birds that fly really well in Africa do have tremendous back cover. Back wing, back cover. There's the kind of wing she's got. Nothing to write home about. You know, their last 4 flights come out a little further than the rest of the flights. So she does have a good wing. This hen did fly back from 700 miles as a young bird. Came back from Ocala, Florida, which was incredible. And but it took her 10 days to do it. And you know, taking 10 days to come back, I didn't think much about it. But Charles Heitzman told me, hey, if they come back from 600 or 700 miles as a young bird, even if it takes them 2 weeks, consider that bird to be a good breeder for you the following year. And she has been exactly what Charles Heitzman said to me. And a lot of people that see this hen say, oh, look at those black eyes she's got. She's got those black eyes. But she doesn't have black eyes at all. She has a dark violet eye. I don't know if you can see it here, but it looks black when the light hits it right. It's just a dark violet eye, that's all it is. And I put her with a cockbird that is very much different than her. He's got, she's kind of got a hard feather, but yet smooth. It's kind of hard to, and really body-wise, you know, I pick up almost any pigeon I got that's got a better body than this pigeon. She trails off a little bit as she gets toward her vents. And you're like, man, she's not enough. You know, if it was a person coming in here to pick out what the best breeder was or the best pigeon, I'd say she'd be down almost last on the list. Jeremy, see if you can. Okay, this next pigeon, I can get him straightened out a little bit. This is the black-eyed hen that I just had in my hands, a 700-mile young bird. This is her mate. And last year, they raised a blue bar that I flew in South Africa that beat every single bird that Mike Gaines had. He entered, I don't know how many pigeons it was, but whatever they were, all those different bloodlines he mixed up and crossed, all those fancy named pigeons that he's got. None of them in the last race beat the baby out of this pigeon and that other pigeon that I just showed you. And you'll see that he's got a different kind of eye. This is the old Heitzman eye. This is what Charles Heitzman, year in, year out, for all his life, for 70 years, he swore that this was the best eye to have for racing. Sort of a red color with a yellow inner circle, red-orange. This particular bird is 96. He's KY96 is his band number. And again, he was one of 8 birds raised by a droop wing and a blue bar hen that I had. That was 2 blue bars. That year, all 8 of them flew back from Florida 500 miles. And he was the best one. He's super soft feather. He's a medium-sized pigeon, maybe medium-small. Alpha personality. Good vents, but not welded together vents. Has a little better body overall. It's a really smooth feather, and he has much more of that what everybody talks about anymore, that cork body. You don't really know he's hardly in your hand. He has that super light balance to him, and she did too. And I think that's part of the reason those babies fly so good. I love this pigeon. I rank him as probably my number 2 breeder, along with number 64 that we talked about earlier. Very smart. Hard pigeon never let you take a picture of. He's always like that. Hard to get a picture of him. Classic no sweat Sion. Classic. He's the only one of those 8 babies that I raised out of that year that I still have. He's very, and they're right back. They just got babies out of the nest. I'm hoping they'll lay again. We'll start. Hey, Jeremy, this is all this is I wanted to talk about this bird because he's a powder silver. A lot of people, they want that real, they love the light colored silvers, the whitish kind of silver. And he's down out of that real pretty double blue banded cock that I had earlier that I was talking about. I don't raise very many of these light powder silvers like he is. 1 out of 20 when I'm raising silvers. Or will be like that. He is so classic Sion that it hurts. I mean, this is what, when people see Sions and think about Sions, this is what they have in their mind. That kind of face and this kind of color. They're beautiful birds. Beautiful. I'm going to talk about this bird and then we're going to be done. But this is the 4th generation down out of hardcore. I think I've improved on it every year. He is built so perfect. Super tight vents, perfect body, little bit long cast, super long wings. You'll see that gray that I talked about, that tan color in the wings. And the one thing about him, I call him Ghost. I don't know if Jeremy can get his eyes, but he's got the super light eyes. When the light hits it just right, he's got almost a white eye. Very dominant little pigeon. no weight to him, and I really want to send a baby out of him or a full brother to him to the Indiana Hoosier Classic. I really think that they'll fly very, very, very good when they get out to distance. These are the distance pigeons. This kind of size, this kind of quality, this strong back, this tight vent, this super nice feathering on them, and then just super intelligent pigeon on top of that. That's Ghost. I called him Ghost because he's got that ghostly look in his face. That's because of those white eyes. He's made it to a little bitty silver hen this year. Okay, I'm in one side of the fifth wall where I keep all the whites. We had a raccoon that came through the trap back in the summer while I was in Florida and wiped out about half of them this year. So we're down to like 24 whites. But all these whites are used as foster parents and hawk bait. We let them out usually when we're flying the birds around the loft. We let them out for a half hour before we let the others out. If the hawks are going to come after them, they'll probably come after the whites. And they make super excellent parents. And almost all of these whites have been trained to come back home. They're not just whites per se, but these birds are actually pretty good flyers on top of everything else. So I just wanted you to get an idea. That little roller, I called it, going to the insurance agency. He was walking around in the grass, and he's taking over. He thinks he's something important now. So I didn't have the heart to kill him. And there he is. But that ends my December 11th video, and I hope you all enjoyed it. It's kind of an update on where I'm at with the racing pigeons this year. I know that I'll fly in Victoria Falls this coming year. Probably will have birds also in the Indiana Hoosier Classic, the biggest race in the United States, and then the other race is one of the biggest races in the world. And I may have birds in that race where they fly out over the water. Those are races that are on my mind right now. Kind of thinking about flying a bird or two in the Gulf Coast Classic if I could get one of the top hammers down there to hammer the birds. But I appreciate all the people that look at the videos, and I hope you've learned a little bit about the Sions. I've been passionate with me for 6 decades now, and